You ever think about quitting?
It's the combat of life hammering the snot out of you.
Well, stand by, dig in deep, and get ready to get fired up with us.
Welcome to the Team Never Quit podcast, the #1 podcast that inspires you to fight on. I'm your host, David Rutherford, here with Mr. Never Quit himself, Marcus Luttrell.
Our mission is to help you embrace the suck of life, to teach you the values of working your ass off, and to interview the most hard-charging people on planet Earth.
We know life is hard. It's time for you to suck it up, Buttercup, and let us teach you to persevere in every environment imaginable by sharing real-world lessons learned by those who never quit. That's right. It's time, Marcus, for us to help them defeat the negative insurgency in their lives.
You fire me up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's roll.
Let's roll. Do you hear that, Marcus? Do you hear that? Does it get you fired up? Do you get your leather hat out and your leather jacket? Get that bullwhip out, Marcus! And yeah! I want you to go fight the Nazis, Marcus! I want you to go into the Amazon rain jungle, and I want you to find the golden head statue and jump in through the blinding blow darts of death to find the great treasure of life, bud. Are you ready for that, buddy?
I am now. I'm ready now. There was a second there where I was gonna chime in, but I was like, wait a minute. You ever see anybody start stumbling? You know, when you know someone's gonna bust their ass and they start going, and I mean, they're doing everything they can. There's a little bit of gracefulness down the line. You're like, oh, you still got it. No, dude,
he's gonna hang on to it.
Hang on to it. He's still going.
It's like the blindfolded sprinting race. Have you seen that one lately? Where the dudes go off and they just run.
Lance was talking about.
Totally, it's hilarious. That's basically what I do on every intro. I am a blind sprinter running into the fiery death. Marcus.
Yeah, Paul Craig. I love, man, when he explains something when he screws up. He goes, kind of like he was talking about the time he was on a crotch rocket. He was hauling ass down the road and he came around this corner. He's like, bro, I was holding 120 and it was awesome. And then I just ran out of talent.
Ran out of talent.
I had never heard that before. But in everything I do now, when I'm going as hard, and I think everything's, you know, when she's like, oh, yeah, I was doing well, I just ran out of talent. And that is such a great way of explaining.
Oh, it's perfect.
Everything, yeah.
So, Marius, what was that theme song from, bud?
Indiana Jones.
And why? Tell me why. You two. Why? And was Indiana Jones pivotal for you?
This is the adventure episode.
Well, thank you. You just ruined my thunder. I was going to get into that.
Just out of curiosity, Wizard, what was Indiana chasing when you were...
Yeah, good call. That's where I was going. Thank you, brother.
Oh.
Yeah, when you first saw Indiana Jones, what was he hunting?
I do know the first one I saw was... I think I saw...
The original?
Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first one, correct?
Oh, okay.
Right?
Nice.
Remy Tap Tap.
Oh, dude.
Remy Tap.
Dude. The Ark of the Covenant, bro. I mean, that's the sickest find you could ever find. That's like the ultimate treasure.
Can you bring Indiana Jones back? Harrison, man, he's the man.
Hell yeah, you can.
You can't ride like a Wolverine.
You know who I'd use? The dude in Wonder Woman, Chris Pine.
He's great.
Right?
Chris is great, man.
Dude, we gotta get him on. He would do that good.
And
who else? Oh, Pratt,
thank you. Jurassic Park was rolling.
Yeah,
I was like,
dude, he could totally.
But he's already got sort of that thing going on with Guardians of the Galaxy. He sort of has that adventurer.
No, exactly. So he's Han Solo.
Right.
He's got the Han Solo covered. Then he's got the Jurassic Park covered, and then we slip him over into the Indiana role. That's the Harrison pipeline, right? Han Solo.
Look at you.
I made that up. Is that even real?
No, now it is. Hell yeah, it's real.
As upcoming actors, you want to follow the. What was it? Harrison, what did I say?
Harrison
pipeline.
Harrison pipeline.
Harrison pipeline, right.
Will he have to crash an airplane too eventually? Probably.
Only if he's president.
All right.
I'll go all day with that useless crap, dude. You know that.
What makes Indiana Jones so friggin' awesome? Tell me right now.
Man, He's everything we all want to be: boy, adolescent, teenager, or adult. Right? He's a college laureate professor. He chases beautiful women. He goes on adventures. He shoots guns. He carries a bullwhip.
I mean, he's badass.
I don't. It shows you that human concept of adventure and how many different ways you can get into it,
and how awesome it is, right?
And the backfill on it is, now that I'm study history and the Egyptians and all the booby traps and everything, that's a real thing. I mean, the deeper you go and into these, I mean, we hadn't even explored half of it, right? There hadn't been an Indiana Jones underwater.
In that Jacques Cousteau.
Right.
But what about Indiana Jones versus James Bond?
Totally different.
Yeah,
totally different.
Which is a better series?
Indiana Jones, because Bond has got a stick up his butt, right? Indiana
British.
Jones is going after treasure. That's cool. That's like chill.
He's British.
That's like, right?
No, but
British.
he's British. But
End of conversation.
No offense.
But
No offense to all our
yeah, no
British,
offense.
to all our British listeners. No offense.
I did a stay with the SAS. A couple of interops. I love them. Got hardcore.
They're bad.
Absolutely.
They're awesome.
That's why they have James Bond.
Totally.
I mean, that's where I was going with that. You can't twist it up on me. But, as soon as we got done watching Indiana Jones, we'd go watch James Bond.
Totally.
It was a multitude of them guys.
Way to dig out.
Put together that dug out good, right?
Yeah, it was awesome, dude.
I dig the both of them. I just wanted to see what y'all would say.
Oh, no, it's a good question.
Who's your James Bond?
I got to pick Daniel Craig, man.
Craig, right? Yeah. He was ours, right, Craig? We came
I
in.
kind of like Roger Moore. I did but he was uppity a little bit. I'm going with Craig now. I'm going with Craig now.
Our generation's
Sean
Craig,
Connery.
right? All right. What about Batman?
What?
Christian Bale.
Bale's our Batman, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's just happened? This is about adventure. This is about
Dude, Batman, James Bond.
This is about real Indiana Jones.
That's what I'm talking about. All these
real
guys
Indiana
do all
Jones.
that.
So when you think
who, Dave, would be the real Indiana Jones?
that one dude, Stanley, who's the
You're
cat?
talking about Morton Stanley in search for Dr. Livingston.
Dr. Livingston, all right?
Into the heart of darkness, the Congo,
Dude,
to the Nile, the
sick,
great days of adventure.
right? And so that idea, people they believe that it ended there, where you could go down in the Nile and find stuff you've never found, or you go out in the Amazon, or you go into Afghanistan and never see anybody that's seen a white dude or whatever like that. But the dude who we got coming on this show today, brother, he is the modern day Indiana Jones. He is the modern day adventurer. Although he ain't searching for the treasures, the lost treasures of the Incan cities or whatever, he's searching for the treasures of the human condition. Right?
Yeah, it's more of an anthropological
I was about to say, he's his own kind of
sociological type of exploration is what he does. He goes into these conflicts that are human created. He's not in some advanced, far off land, seeking for the ancient temple of.
Yeah, it's not the physical treasure; it's the emotional. Yeah,
but he's
spiritual.
definitely exploring those
human treasure.
Dude, you watched Indiana Jones before we did this show, didn't you? All right.
Melanie's kind of the one that got me spun back into that. She's been to Machu Picchu and a couple. She's the one that drags me around. We don't go anywhere.
I love all the missionary work that she's doing. You need to go on some of those.
Way to dime me out in front of everybody that I don't go on missionary trips with my wife.
Bro.
I'm the turd of the bunch, right? Ding dong. Your wife is such a great person. What the hell happened to you?
Oh, dude. Listen, we can do one together. I know we call up Jeremy Courtney. We'll get over there right now, bro.
I'm legit. You see my kids in her office? I got 12 of them. She just goes over and hangs out with them.
Totally. All right. What we got to do is we got to introduce our guest to this cat. Because
what we need to do is, why don't you get out of the way of the whole welcome stuff, and then we can talk about
that's brilliant.
Let's knock that out, because
ready?
I'm anxious to get into this.
Right? Welcome to the TNQ podcast. I'm your host, David Rutt Rutherford, here along with Mr. Never Quit himself, Marcus, Lone Survivor Luttrell, and the Wizard, who we're not going to tell you his name because he's an adventurer still in a different perspective, but he's out there adventuring in. What's the word I'm looking for?
He's our link to our old reality.
Totally is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
important to me.
Yeah, that is huge.
We may not let him quit.
No.
We want you to quit. Be careful. Hey, get over there and get some good. But
Get
get your
some
ass in something where we can get some stories, damn it.
Totally.
I want you to be safe, but you better hang it out on the edge a little bit when you come back up in here.
Yeah, I want to know the story, dude. I love it. You're our Indiana Jones wizard. We love you, bud.
Thanks, guys.
All right. If you're a first-time listener to this
It
show,
makes my house even better because that's the guest book.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, you know I sign your guest book every time I leave. David Rutherford, CIA agent. You know,
mix it up.
You know I sign
Different.
David Rutherford.
Why is his name
poet laureate?
What's this right here?
David Rutherford.
I know. 'Cause
You
I'm
know,
past that. That's
Navy
going to the
SEAL
kids.
admiral.
Yeah. Like, Dad had a friend that was an admiral named David Rutherford.
Bullshit. He was an E5.
Dave Rutherford, space cowboy,
Totally. Door gunner.
Yeah.
All right.
Apollo
submarine door
astronaut.
gunner.
Submarine. That was my favorite one, bro. All right. Welcome to the show. Have we got a doozy planned for you? I mean, we bring in this incredible guy, a modern day Indiana Jones, but searching for the treasure within the human soul in wars all around the world. If you're a repeat offender and you're back, you know why you're back, because you understand our mission, which is to deliver the most positive, fired up, intense content available in podcasts today, man. We are here to help you overcome the obstacles in your life, to face the adversity head on, to knock the crap out of the negative insurgency in your life, to learn how to suck it up, Buttercup, and to develop your never quit mindset, man. That's our mission. That's why we keep coming back. That's why we try and bring on the most incredible guests available out there in the world from all walks of life to share with you their greatest never quit story or stories to help spark you, to help you become legendary in your own world. All right. How was that?
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was nice.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it, brother.
You're welcome.
Hey, can we get a bio on this guy, please? And listen, hey, if you're listening, bear with the wizard. It's worth hearing this information. And as your mouth is open catching flies, just prepare yourself. Go.
We still haven't used his name yet.
Go ahead. What is it really, Marcus?
Sir Robert Young Pelton.
Can we dub him, or will you dub him later? Dub him now. In the voice. Dub him in the voice.
Sir Robert Young Pelton.
Hereby.
Could I read the entire biography with an English accent?
It's literally, you start reading this dude's bio, you read his name, then you start reading his bio, and you slip into that language, right? That accent.
You hear the voice.
Yeah.
You hear the
It
voice.
starts coming out automatically. I don't know what the hell is going on here. I can't stop it.
And the funny thing, he's the furthest thing from an English cat you'll ever experience. All right, go.
So funny. No, you know what we're going to do? We're going to play a game. And I want you guys to mention any place or any conflict in the past 25 years. And I will tell you what Robert Young Pelton had to do with it. His bio is that extensive, I think we'll probably tag everything.
You ready?
You, number one, go.
Sierra Leone.
Let's see. Well, in his book, Hunter, Hammer, and Heaven, he talks about his time that he spent in 3 wars, one of which was in Sierra Leone, ethnic cleansing.
Go. Marcus.
Kosovo?
How about Chechnya? He was there in the Battle of Grozny with Chechen rebels getting shelled by Russians. Dave, your turn.
Let's go. How about Afghanistan?
Somalia?
Iraq.
Ooh, let's see. Afghanistan. He was. Where do you even start with this one?
Oh, bro.
He was the last person to interview Massoud, the commander of the Northern Alliance, prior to his assassination. This was
9/11.
just pre 9/11. He was embedded with the original horse soldiers and the ODA teams.
He was with who? Dostum.
Dosum, who was probably the biggest warlord in that part of the country. Also present during the Battle of Kali Jengi.
Yeah, thanks.
Give me another one.
Somalia.
Somalia. Let's see.
He fought pirates.
He was present during the siege on Villa Somalia in Mogadishu. And let's see. Hold on.
Dude's so tough, he
He
goes in
created
and
a
sets up a newspaper.
Somali report with the assistance of 140 local Somalis. This was ground coverage
intel
intel
network.
on Al-Shabaab, pirates, governments, contractors, intelligence groups involved just in that region. This was in 2011.
He's one of them guys.
Just keep reading it, man.
He's one of those guys, if he wanted to disappear.
Oh, totally.
You know what I'm talking
Totally.
about?
Totally. He knows everybody everywhere and can get you a place to
He's
stay.
off the grid with that.
Totally.
Not the internet, and he's plugged in. It's humid.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, that's sort of his
I need a
specialty.
place to stay for the rest of my life. Come out here, buddy.
I got a guy
I
over
know a
here.
guy, yeah.
I know a guy.
All right, so let's do it. Let's do
Do
a
a
rundown
formal.
here. Just
Do a
have
formal
little
one.
patience as we're going to run through this thing, try to give it a little description. Originally, he's from Edmonton, Canada. Growing up, he says that he had a love for adventure and exploration, since he was young. He left home when he was 16, living in a Rambler station wagon, picking fruit. Eventually ends up in
lived
Toronto.
in a van.
Unless you're Canadian and it was a Rambler?
As a Rambler down by the orchard.
Down by the orchard.
He ends up in Toronto. He decides, from what he says, he starts getting really interested in earning money. He wants to go into marketing. Starts working in a mailroom at a major marketing agency, BBDO, there in Toronto. Ends up opening his own agency, Pelton Associates, with clients Marvel,
Wait.
Disney, Mattel. He worked with Steve Jobs during the launch of the Lisa and the Mac
Cool.
computers. This agency goes to 126 on Inc.'s 500.
Wow.
He's taken some break on vacation in Monte Carlo, and on the spur of the moment, he decides to travel to Africa and live with the Dogon people in the Sahara for a period of time.
Hey, let's go live with the
For a period
Dogons.
of time.
Are they the Sand People? They're the Sand People in Star Wars, right?
They live
But
in the
I do
Sahara.
think that they're nomadic. Anyways, he realizes all these efforts for other people, he's been doing these jobs that he now considers dull and boring. He decides to make himself the product and work for himself, traveling and interviewing people. So he starts doing these expeditions around the world.
But conflicts, right? He
No,
chooses
he
conflict.
starts traveling places and basically making travel guides, but he starts realizing he would run into journalists who, this is what he says, they would make fun of him, saying, "Oh, you did X or Y, but yeah, try doing that in Algeria or Afghanistan or Liberia."
Okay.
And this sparks something in his head. He sees this as a niche, and he decides he wants to start going to places that no one else wants to visit.
The world's most dangerous places.
Well, and that's the name of the first work that he does when he starts taking this up. The World's Most Dangerous Places, the title of a book. It's I actually ran into this before. I personally went in the Navy. I read the entire thing. It's over 1,000 pages, and it covers
Everywhere.
pretty much every location that you don't go on vacation
Or you go to war at.
or you go to wars, of that nature. That was his first book. It's now in its 5th edition.
That's cool.
His first trip, he goes to Algeria in the Triangle of Death. This is during the conflict between the government and Islamic rebels. He ends up getting arrested there. Then
I
1996.
once had an Algerian woman try and teach me Arabic.
How'd that go?
Her Lockheed Martin
What'd
boyfriend.
you learn instead?
I learned a lot of.
Right?
What'd you learn, though?
Well, I didn't learn much because her Lockheed Martin boyfriend told her that she can't teach me Arabic anymore after like 2 lessons.
I'm trying to mull through the fact that some dudes were making fun of him because he was a millionaire playboy in Monte Carlo,
Yeah, living in
watching
Monaco.
the race go by with women around him. And
Yeah.
that
Who
just
would
goes to
make
show
fun
you,
of
right?
that, right?
Yeah. Look at this
Robert, you're
loser.
so
Look at this
boring.
What? I'll give it up right now to ask dare
To
me.
go to wars.
Fucking dare me.
Fine, I'll go live with the Sand People. Fuck you. All right, 1996, I guess this is like his second trip. He decides he's going to go find the Taliban in Afghanistan. Following that, 99, he's in Chechnya. I think we mentioned this earlier. He's in Grozny. He's in
All the
Grozny. He's
finest
reporting
places.
while embedded with Chechen rebels fighting the Russians. They're getting rocketed. 2001, he starts working as a journalist in Afghanistan. This is, and he's with the ODA's 595, 574.
Or
so
soldiers.
the first guys to go in there. He's also associated, gets introduced to General or Warlord, whichever you want to call him, Dosum. We actually had Greg Barker, our guest,
Yeah.
who was on making the
documentary
He-
on
Legion
that.
of Brothers was on that whole topic.
Yeah.
He takes in 2003. He's on. I'm just brushing over some of the biggest. There are so many other little projects he's done in between. He's 2003. He's working for National Geographic Adventure. They're in the Darien Gap, which is the isthmus between Panama, basically between Central and South America, right there
Isthmus.
between Colombia in Panama. He gets abducted by the Auto Defensas Unidas de Colombia, which
Nice.
are the
Good
AUC.
accent. Got kidnapped, right?
He got kidnapped, held and detained for 10 days by them. Later that year, he goes on assignment with ABC and then CBS, searching for WMDs in Iraq.
Can you imagine if this dude would have had an iPhone and a GoPro back?
Oh, bro.
If that would have been the standard for what you have to do to get the story for journalism in that regard.
I think though, but that would have taken away.
No, but that's why pioneers.
Yeah.
That's how those are born, right? I mean, that's kind of by design.
I like where your head's
the
at.
guy who could utilize this to its utmost came right before it.
Right. No,
That's
that
the way it
makes
always
sense.
works,
That's
right?
the way it always
works. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm trying to put that
I get
together, but it seems like it's by design, though, right? And you're good. We can't let you be that good.
Exactly.
So he goes to work. Now he's in Iraq. He's on assignment with ABC, CBS. He apparently gets frustrated by the restrictions placed on journalists, and he goes off on his own. What's he do? This kind of like sets a whole new level in his. I mean, at first he's the guy traveling and interviewing people, but now he's developing intelligence networks. He built a network of informants, 700 Iraqis across the country. He's actually selling information to the U.S. government who's buying this. This model,
that agency's already. He's too good.
He takes this model eventually. He also goes into Afghanistan. I mean, he's arranging meetings between Taliban and U.S. generals. This is
epic.
But doing it on the auspices of just men can get along. Even when we're out here killing each other and he knew he was going to attack. Yeah, he's like, hey.
Treasures.
Yeah, I mean, arranging these meetings that are along a line of thinking that's completely outside the box. And he also gets involved. He's in Pakistan. He's in Somalia. He's in Libya. These things.
This was recently in Sudan, right? They're in their civil war.
In Sudan, he did a massive 130-page investigative expose and 30-minute documentary on the conflict in South Sudan. This was for Vice magazine.
I love the fact that he did that for Vice, man. That's cool.
Yeah. Obviously, he's a writer. The additional books he's done, Come Home Alive, it's a real-world survival guide, Hunter, Hammer, and Heaven, based on his experiences in 3 small different wars, License to Kill. It's all about contractors with the U.S. government during Iraq War.
Didn't he help Eric Prince write a book?
On. There's been something in there. He was associated with rewriting an autobiography for Eric Prince. That was in there. He's done journalism for CBS, ABC, CNN, National Geographic, Discovery, Bloomberg. It's
loser.
What a dork.
Over.
Do we really want to bring him on?
Another one of these guys that has a resume that is so long.
This sounds really cool, man. Where's the hard part?
Yeah.
Where's the damn never quit story?
Never quit being awesome.
Yeah, right? That's what he is.
Hey, man, didn't they just start the world's most interesting man?
The contest.
The beer?
Yeah, there's an actual contest.
Okay, let's put him in there.
Totally.
We need to put him in there.
I say we submit him in there.
Nomination.
Yeah. Dude, we'll secretly
write a letter and
Our
everything.
official nomination
is Sir Robert
Pelton.
Young Pelton.
This year, the TNQ podcast officially recognizes and puts forward the candidate for most interesting man in the world, Sir Robert Young Pelton.
I love it, man. Well, dude, I'll tell you what,
Or we'll
man.
just have to start our world's most interesting man.
Right? The TNQ.
Most interesting man.
Because everybody that comes on is pretty wild, dude.
Yeah, we don't want to pick favorites.
Yeah, we don't want to pick favorites.
We're not picking him. He did this himself. He just read his whole freaking bio for the last 30 minutes. I don't play favorites, and I don't give handouts.
True to that.
You earned that.
You earned it.
It's kind of one of those deals. Look at the path that we chased and carried, but it was also a physical. We became that, right? The fighting part. And everyone thinks you can't have an adventure like we have unless you're able to take it to that max. But
he's proof positive.
Yeah, man. You can be in kind of any kind of mindset or any kind of characteristics of the timid or the outgoing, the violence or the nonviolence, and still have one of those
sick ass lives.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you say we bring Sir Robert Young Pelton onto the show? Marcus, I'm telling you, man, as a cat that has been to some of the world's most dangerous places, as a person that coveted that, I gotta tell you, it was one thing to go do it when I had Apaches supporting me, when I had a Spectre up above, or I was working with the agency and I knew that we could get some, maybe not get some drones. That might be a bad reference right there, but we would have at least somebody somewhere that might come help us, right? What a difference, though, when you're on the flip side, you're rolling out, you ain't got shit, you got no guns, you got no Spectre, you got no army behind you, you got nothing, and you're going out there pretty much just to see what kind of trouble you can stir up, bro.
Hanging him out there.
Hanging it out, dude.
Get the story.
Just to get the freaking story, brother. That, in my mind, is pretty awesome.
Well, it's that ultimate adventure.
Nice.
You just go out there with your wits and your skills, going where the adventure is.
Right.
And depending on what that is and what time frame, and I guess what you're trying to seek. But he always had mad respect for them guys, man. We didn't get a chance to. They didn't get in with us much, but when they're hanging it out there by themselves, and when they leave us, they have to go somewhere else. And you're right, the security standpoint, there is a level of comfort that we have that if I get in a pinch, I know tanks, helicopters, and everything else is going to show up trying to help me out. But
plus, just having 19 other guns next to you that are going to bring a level of hatred that's not even
and
funny.
most of the time, the intel you're going off is something that he had to muster up himself. You
That's what blows me away.
Exactly.
His ability to create his own intel networks, dude.
That's an art in itself.
It is an art. So let's stop talking about this, man. Let's bring this cat on, because I swear to God, this is going to be one of our greatest interviews ever. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Team Never Quit podcast, Mr. Robert Young Pelton. Sir, welcome aboard.
Thank you guys for the great intro.
You earned it.
You definitely earned it, man. You definitely earned it. All right, now, sir, before we get into us just with our mouths agape listening to your incredible wisdom on the never quit mindset as it relates to the world you've been in and all the different worlds, all the different cultures, we got to get warmed up. We gotta loosen up a little bit. We gotta shake it out. We gotta stretch out that prefrontal cortex. So what we do with our guests is we go through a little exercise we call the Mad Minute. The Mad Minute. All right? Now, I'm guarantee you've used a million Mad Minutes in your life, but those were probably life and death situations. This, not so much. We just want to have some fun. So, all right.
This is actually the most poignant part of the whole show, so stand by.
Are you ready, sir?
I am ready. Fire away.
Marcus, let her rip.
All right, favorite superhero?
You didn't see that coming, did you?
Favorite superhero is Sir Richard Francis Burton, who's actually a real guy.
Wow.
Right. I actually had said it in my head. We don't put this in there. I was going to ask him about Burton or Bingham.
Were you?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Either an Indiana Jones or a Han, a Burton, Bingham. Yeah. Man, I've been studying them guys now. That's weird.
Dude, you're a geek. You know that?
I am,
I just want you to know that. You're turning into a geek. You're no longer a pipe hitter. You're turning into a podcasting geek.
Yeah, Burton. Good answer.
All right, Wizard, fire away.
All right, best dive bar on the 7 continents. Where is it?
Oh, that's a good one. The best dive bar would have to be the bottom of the Gandamak in Kabul, which was called something, but I don't remember because I was too drunk to remember most of the nights. But it had a giant Mr. Laughing Skull sticker on it, and inside there were the most reprehensible, vile scum that you could find in Kabul at the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's something out of Indiana Jones, right?
It's Star Wars scene. You roll it in there.
Any genre.
Exactly.
Again, you got the assassins sitting at one side. You got the facilitators, the intel guys, the wannabe weenies, the freaking the pilots.
Mine was in Baku, man. Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I know exactly where he's talking about.
What was the name?
I've been...
Mr. Pelton, what was the name of it again? Or you say you didn't remember?
I don't remember. It's under the Gandamak. Gandamak was set up by a journalist friend of mine who was tired of being a journalist and said, fuck it, journalists drink. I'm going to open a bar and a hotel. And he did. And it was the Snug. Was it called the Snug or something
That sounds right. That sounds right. That sounds right.
It was great. It was great.
Wasn't it right down the street from the Chinese massage parlor, too?
I refuse to answer that question on the ground.
No
But it's
knowledge.
across from the Iranian embassy. It was across from the Iranian embassy.
I know exactly where that is.
Conveniently
yeah.
located in the
That's how you know
vicinity
it's
of
a
other
good dive bar
important
because you don't even
buildings.
know the name.
Totally.
That's dive bar.
Exactly. It just was downstairs. That's all I remember. And the ceiling was really low.
Because we could, you know what? If we keep going down that, this whole show will be on dive
we don't wanna
bars around the
incriminate
world.
anyone
Yeah,
or-
yeah, no,
yeah,
that's
let's
it.
just not do
All
that.
right. Here you go. What is your power animal?
Oh man, I think the gopher, because it just takes so much to kill them. It takes so much cunning and stealth and patience.
Fucking
to kill
brilliant.
gophers.
That's genius.
Brilliant.
That's the best answer I've
Yep.
heard yet.
Yep.
Go, Marcus.
What's your favorite place to write?
Great question, dude.
Oh wow. You know, my ranch, the place that I wish was the best place is my ranch, but the place that I get most of my writing done is on a damn airplane.
Right?
No.
Me too.
I believe
It's
that.
different between what I like, this is what works, yeah.
Yeah, totally. All right,
All right.
Wizard, fire away.
Get a little serious here. I want you to give us an example of a time you saw something strikingly beautiful in the midst of a place that was otherwise full of ugliness and evil.
Otherwise known as a shithole. Just kidding.
The first time that I watched a scud drop in Grozny in 1999, it was winter time, and we'd come through the mountains, and I was with the jihadis who kept yelling Allahu Akbar, and then we got out to take a pee, and I saw this huge orange column, like a dirty orange color coming out of the city, and then I heard like the boom later, and it was a scud hitting the city, and I thought, wow, it's like Christmas.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right? The juxtaposition in that imagery is awesome, man. I love that. All
Yeah.
right. If you could go back in time and resurrect some person from history and sit down and have, an hour-long conversation with them where they would answer any question you presented, who would it be and what period?
I think it'd be Alexander the Great, and I'd ask him what the fuck the oracles told him in Egypt before he set off to conquer the world.
Wow.
Awesome response. He didn't even hesitate about that.
Well, no, he's
dude.
been holding on to that for a long time, probably.
That's tough.
No,
That
I'm
was good, man.
I'm writing a book called Finding Coney, which is why Africa's fucked up and why we fucked it up and why they fuck us up. And it's the interaction between Africa and the rest of the world. And one of the things that Alexander did, because he was a kid, is he went down to this desert oasis, by the border of Libya and Egypt, and he consulted with these oracles who were kind of con artists, and they would sit in these chambers outside where you were sitting and say things and make noises. And then he went out and told his army, okay, let's go conquer the world. And whatever happened in that building is worth figuring out what the hell they said, because then you can go out and conquer the world.
That is an epic response, man. All right, Marcus, go, big guy.
Man, mine are lame after that one. That one was good.
No, your last one was sick. That was a great question.
Yeah, I know, but the Alexander one floored me. All right, brother, what was your high school mascot?
I do not remember. I went to high school. I think I passed, but I spent most of my time not going to high school. So
Awesome.
I'd have to think back. I couldn't afford a mascot. How about that? Is that a hard luck story right there?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a never quit story right there. All right, go,
Yeah.
Wizard.
All right. Would you rather live one life that lasted 1,000 years, or would you rather have 10 different lives, each of which are 100 years?
Oh, that's a good question, because the one thing you get from age and experience is a sense that everything's fucked up and it always will be fucked up. So I would rather be 19 100 times than 1900 years old.
Oh, that's wisdom right there, dude. That's wisdom right there.
Yeah, I think there's a level of security in the world that with age, after that whole part of it, afterwards, you would learn how to manipulate it.
Oh, for sure, right? Here you go. What is what? I mean, because when I imagine bucket lists, I think of, you think of the average person, but you basically have been living out a bucket list day
Good
in and
question.
day out for your whole life. Do you actually have a bucket list, and what is one item that's in there?
What the hell's left on there?
Yeah, what's left?
So I don't have a bucket list. I just get intrigued by things I can't figure out. So, like when I went to live with the Taliban, because I had read an article about students taking over Afghanistan, but they were driving tanks, and I asked myself, how do students know how to drive tanks? So I went to Pakistan along the border area, and I went into Kabul just after the Taliban had taken over the city, and I spent like 4 weeks with the Taliban back in 1996 or 95, something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't have a bucket list per se. I just find something interesting, like, Joseph Kony. The reason I'm hunting down Joseph Kony, because I figure, why the fuck not?
Need help? You need help with that bastard? I can help you, man. That right there, God.
I got to tag that. Do you think, are you more curious now or when you first began this, when you, I guess, maybe took
That's
your first
like an
trip over
interview
to
question.
Africa,
Can we
living with
pivot?
the people there in the Sahara? I got a question onto that. Curious.
Well, I get surprised by less things because I see patterns and I can predict things very well. But I do see things every once in a while that really intrigue me, and I try to add some level of like sick black humor to it to make it engaging. So, my South Sudan thing, I literally took a child soldier back to South Sudan who was the manager of a Costco to fix the country. And I figured that was a great premise for a story in a documentary.
That's one of my favorite things
So
you've
I get
done.
more perverse and evil as I get older.
I was wondering if that was a whole premeditated idea or if that had happened, while you were in the middle of filming over there in South Sudan.
No, think about it. Like, white guy goes to Africa to tell people how shitty it is. Like, nobody wants to
do that.
So child soldier goes back to Africa, leaves his job at Costco to fix country on his vacation. That's the story I want.
Well, at least what it tells you is you're still walking down that path, because you said you started to see patterns. That's true. When you get older with age and more experience, the more you find, the more you want to find. And when you start to see those duly running patterns, you're taking the kid back, man. Now you're anticipating the outcome, right? You're trying to see if you with that dark humor. That's how you talk to yourself. Hey, brother, I'm running down that same line you are right now.
I love it. All right. Before we go too further, I gotta interject and pivot a little bit to we've got to get to the meat and potatoes of the show, and that's kind of my job, sir. So, people come to our show not only for our wonderful, clever, humor and twisted minds, but they come because they want to hear amazing, never quit stories. They want to feel connected to somebody in a story that ignites them to get out there and fulfill their never quit mindset in some capacity. But they might be struggling. They might be in the beatdown. They might be lost in the abyss of uncertainty or lack of purpose. So, sir, if you would you please share with our listeners your greatest never quit story or stories?
Well, there's no such thing as one story that's greater than them all, but there is a story that you can write over and over again that does give you what you want. And when I meet people who are confused, angry, dealing with issues, whatever, I say, go find someone who's more fucked up than you and help them. And typically, that is the simplest way to get from point A to point B. If the guy's been in the military and maybe he's got issues related to violence and PTSD or whatever, I said, let's go to a war where people are really fucked up and let's do good things. And I got to tell you that is the root of all redemption, right? When you realize that you as a person have skills and abilities and energy and optimism that can help somebody rise up. Now, I focus on areas like, Liberia back in the day, or, Chechnya or South Sudan, places like at the bottom of the heap, Yemen, Somalia. And I have to say, you get this sense of optimism, because when you leave this country, you're being machine gunned with bad stories and car accidents, rapes, murders. You name it, trivial to serious. You get out of that bubble and you get into a place where somebody literally has no food. So, for example, I went to Liberia to be with the lured rebels when they were losing. they lied to me. They told me they were winning. So
No, we're winning, really. Come on.
Optimism.
No, serious.
No, really. Come on.
I went to their rebel headquarters. It took me 13 hours of driving and whatever. And I got there, and they thought I was the UN coming to help them. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm just here to watch you win. They're like, oh, we're not winning. We're surrounded. How did you get in? So I watched this small group of people with nothing. I mean, no food, no money, no nothing, get attacked 3 to 4 times a day. And, I had all these child soldiers. I was in charge of the small boys unit. And I had like gun boys that would be ferocious, in battle and then be like little kids when we're back home. And when they attacked, all the people would flee into the bush and literally just hide in the bush. And then they would come back. And I thought, well, I'm going to try to start an economy here. So what I did is I brought in some flour, and I had a guy go get some sugar, and they started making donuts. And I said, here, make donuts. I'll buy them with the money I brought in, and then you give them to everybody. And I literally watched a group of people go from absolute disaster and nothing to forming an economy. And so, example, that's not a great story like, oh, this guy had no legs and he walked 10 miles, but it's just how people work. They can build. If you start the spark, if you show them what can be done, they will do it. So
Teach a man to fish, right?
Can I ask you a quick question though, because something really leapt out at me in that story was you initiated with this concept of redemption. Is redemption an essential component of the never quit mindset in your estimation?
Yeah, because if you're in trouble, you fucked up. And this is, you got to own it, right?
Right.
And sometimes we think that, society did that, or I got blown up and that caused this. And I don't know how much you know about my background, but I went to a school that was famous for killing children. They killed
right.
A canoe trip.
12 kids. Yeah. It's also famous for killing somebody and bringing them back from life on one of our snowshoe trips. So I come from a place where there are no fucking excuses. And so when I went into combat, I'm not a fighter. I'm just hanging out with people who are killing people. I watch how that affects them over the long run, because it's an incredibly intense experience that can generate a lot of negative thoughts, right? Because it's not like you fought a battle and you won and they give you gold and women and property like in the old days. They actually just say, yeah, fine, you've been to Iraq 12 times, who cares, right? So those people feel a loss. They feel like they screwed up. And I'm not saying they did something wrong. I'm saying they need to gain the high ground by saying, I learned skills. I know how to deal with people. I'm going to go help these people that just had this earthquake. And Team Rubicon, for example.
Absolutely.
I went and worked on a ship for 2 years, pulling dead babies and screaming Syrians out of the water in the Aegean during the winter and the Med. And these things all restore every missing piece of faith that you might have in yourself.
Have you seen? Can you give us a specific example of someone that you watched go through that progress or that process where they were, really just being hammered by their own self-loathing or depression, lack of self-worth, all of this, and then they go into this situation, they just become transformed?
Well, I'm an enabler, so I attract all those people, right? You mentioned that you read my book. Somebody picks up a 1,000-page book that's 2.5 inches thick that says the world's most dangerous places. They're kind of fucked in the beginning, right? So,
what are you saying?
Those people are looking for something, right? They're trying to get away from the norm, the thing that's driving them crazy, and they start reading through it, and they start realizing that, hey, why did I think I had to live my life this way? Now, when you're asking me for specific people, I deal with thousands of them.
Yeah.
People tell me all the time, famous people, famous journalists, famous politicians, they tell me, hey, I read your book when I was a kid. I say, fuck you. And they said, yeah, but I changed my life. I'll tell you an interesting story. I wrote a book about Blackwater, right, called License to Kill. Mm-hmm. And my modus operandi is I don't just write books. I have to actually do what those guys do. So I went to Eric Prince and I said, Eric, what's the most dangerous thing that you do? And he says, it doesn't sound sexy, but we have this stupid run from the green zone to the airport. Now, this is 2004, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, those guys get shot at all the time. It's, you're guaranteed to get shot at, probably car bombs or whatever. I said, great. I said, I just want to hang out there for like a month and just do that shit. And one of the guys on the team were all sort of misfits. They'd all been kicked off their pretty boy details that the SEALs did. And so they kind of ended up in this sort of shitty job of having to drive to the airport.
The buy-op
Doing the
run.
buy-op
Yeah,
run,
they're
right?
doing the buy-op run, baby.
I don't think there's anybody that's been in that city.
And they had to drive these really slow, stupid vehicles that Eric got cheap. So anyway, so there was one guy on the team that would not talk to me. And he was the guy that always took point, and he had all these skulls and black things. And you can read about this in the book, but you can also read about it in a graphic novel I did called Roll Hard. And he wouldn't say much, and he was raising birds, and he quiet all the time. And then finally he came to me one day, and he said, holy shit, you're the guy. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm the guy? He said, you're the fucking guy. And I said, explain. He said, I was a jackoff when I was a kid, and I read your book, and I joined the Marine Corps. And I wanted to do something more with my life than just be a jackoff. And then I said, well, what's your problem? Like, why are you so like quiet? And then I find out that that's the guy that was supposed to be in the car with the 4 guys that got killed in Fallujah.
Yeah, with Scotty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And he had the survivor's guilt because of that.
I know who you're talking about. I was working for Blackwater at that time. Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
He came out of this funk because he realized, it wasn't his fault, but by talking about it and me actually writing about it and then making him sort of a semi-heroic figure in a graphic novel, he's like, fuck it. I own it. I can deal with it now. So that's an example.
That's really cool. I think when people hear you try and quantify the influence you've had, I naturally, and I think our listeners right now are going, well, that's great, man. You obviously have gotten out and really explored and seen so many different things. What was the precipice for you doing that? Well, just to cover that briefly so people have context of what made you walk away from being a very successful entrepreneur to going to find the world's most dangerous places. What was the catalyst for you?
Well, I was a poor kid. I lived in a car and I picked fruit, and I was obsessed with making money. So I started my own business, and by the time I was 31, I was a millionaire, drove a Rolls Royce, had $1,600 suits, and all my clients thought I was a rich asshole. And so I figured I'd made it, and I was on the Inc. 500 list, number 126, I think. And about that time, a number of my mentors, my clients, and my father died suddenly. My father got ALS, which means you got 6 months, to get to know your father and watch him die. My other client got bone cancer. He was playing tennis and broke one of his, his clavicle, and it didn't heal, and he was dead within a few months. And I used to take a month off every year and just go to the most remote place in the world on vacation. So I did these expeditions in Borneo and stuff like that. And on these expeditions, I would meet journalists who would make fun of me because I was the rich asshole who went on these, expeditions. And they said, oh, you think it's cool that you drove around the entire island of Borneo? Well, try getting into Algeria, try getting into whatever, where they're trying to kill you. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting.
That's awesome.
I started to set up interviews for these guys by literally going to these war zones, finding the rebel leader and saying, oh, do you want to do an interview with my friends? And I really liked that, and I was good at it, and it was real. You know what I mean? It was something that I did so effortlessly and so joyously that I didn't even really think about what I was doing. And when these people died, and I realized that these people were in their 50s, and they thought they had their whole life ahead of them, and they didn't. And all the things they dreamed about never happened. I thought, fuck, I have to do the thing that I want to do. Whether it makes sense or not, it doesn't matter. I just have to do this thing. And I did. And I have to say it was the smartest thing I ever did. Yet people say that I'm crazy. They say, well, why would somebody go into these dirty wars and be on the rebel side with the jihadis, with Al-Qaeda, with all the Taliban, and why would he then go to the other side, And I said, because I need to show people what war's about. And now people don't give a shit what war's about, so I have to focus on different things, things that are much more complex, like why can't we find Joseph Kony, or why is Africa screwed up? But the point is I follow what I love, what my heart tells me to do, and I try to share it with young people. When I say young people, it's because old people are too grumpy and set in their ways.
Amen.
But I'm trying to get young people to make those right decisions when they're young and say, don't go for the safe way, man, because if you think you're on an adventure and you got a return ticket, it's not an adventure.
Nope.
Absolutely. One of the things that I love, so you've sparked this journey. You set forth on this epic, tale, or writing this epic tale of your own existence. Obviously, as you go and you get to sit down and be with the Taliban and their push into Kabul, and then you get to go into all these different places. What did you start learning about them culturally, their never quit mindset? Why? What was driving them? Was it idealism? Was it power? Was it greed? Was it evil? What were the things that you saw that kind of would lend you to understand the never quit mindset in a greater cultural diversity?
That's good. So never quit means you have to keep going, but when you keep going, you lose things. And if you've got nothing to lose, it's easier to go forward. Oh. One of the things about survival that they don't teach you is the more shit that you have, the more baggage, the more concerns you have, the less decisions you're going to make, and you're going to be frozen or sitting there because you think somebody else is going to come, or you're worried about, what if I leave this behind, or what about that person? And these insurgent groups are basically people that have nothing to lose. So whatever they believe in, and you got to go back to early America, you got to go back to what makes Americans think the way they think. We have so much freaking baggage that we can't even cross the street without wondering, if we get a jaywalking ticket, how much is that going to cost me? And we live in a world of risk adversity now because we have so much stuff to worry about. So the first thing you learn about, if you want to survive, is bring nothing with you. And that goes against all the survival advice you'll ever hear. But it's how I operate. It's how I fucking operate. I don't bring a sleeping bag. I don't bring all these things you're supposed to bring, because I know I'm going to find somebody with a plastic bag who lives in a dirt hut, and I'll cook him a meal and I'll sleep on that floor. If I need to get a ride somewhere, I'll give the guy $20 and we'll go either steal a car or we'll hire a taxi or whatever, and we'll get there. And this is what keeps you alive, because people want you to stay alive. They're not thinking that you're there as some kind of sneaky or rich guy or whatever. They want you to understand what they're doing because they have nothing, and you're living with them and understanding it.
You make a quote in one of your talks that's available on YouTube for our listeners, when you say, "We're losing our love of risk. We are letting fear prevent us from doing the things that make us great." Can you expand on that concept and really drill down on maybe if there's a time or something specific that causes that in us?
No, I mean, look, right now, if you went and decided you wanted to go talk to some group like ISIS or whatever, you would feel that there'd be a lot of penalties and repercussions against you, both financially, socially, whatever, and B, that no one would care. So you're not going to take that risk, right? Let's say you want to quit your job. You've got a pension, or you've got something coming down the pike, but you really feel that you want to be a ballet dancer or a car mechanic or something. It's financially punishing to follow your dreams now. So even the smallest thing, like even speaking out. I mean, how many times are people criticized and crucified for having a different freaking opinion, for being adventurous in their thinking? My point is that the entire culture we live in is terrified. So we have all these fucking soft walls and lines painted on the road and barriers, both social and real and financial and legal, that keep us trapped. And this is where desperation comes from, by the way.
Very interesting that you bring up that and you connect those two. Sure. Now, what have you seen? Because obviously, when you go to these countries where people reach that point where they have nothing to lose as a result of desperation, what happens? Is there a rebirth that you've seen, or do they continue to eat and feed upon themselves and destroy the very fabric of civilization that can make things great?
Well, now you're getting into the science of revolution, but typically you have two layers of any insurgency. You have the intellectual pricks who come up with all the dogma and the useless sayings and posters that will benefit by ousting their competition. And then you have the poor, stupid, unwashed, desperate hoi polloi who must actually pick up a gun and kill somebody. And I travel with both those groups, and I find that we don't express ourselves to such a degree that we're willing to die for our ideas, and that we tend to only exercise extreme views when we find other extreme people around us. So what they do is these people are brainwashed essentially into believing a dogma, and once they start destroying their society, they realize that there is no benefit in destroying society. But yet the democratic paths, and you see this in Afghanistan, the democratic paths are all corrupt and useless as well. So the lesson is that we need to understand that when somebody has an idea and says, oh, this is wrong, we need to challenge that we as humans have the capability of extreme violence and organization and rapid movement, as well as calm democratic process. And that has been taken away from us.
Can you give that example of the experience that you had when you went out and you were working with Afghan generals and Taliban warlords from Pakistan, and you brought them together to sit down, and you had 1,200, you're paying 1,200 surrogate basically assets in Afghanistan to feed information and to create this opportunity. Can you help us? Can you help our listeners understand what was the reason you wanted to do that? And did you know that ultimately getting the two people that hated each other most, just talking to each other, would have some positive effect?
Yeah, so, when I first started, I was a marketing guy. And then as a marketing guy, you learn to understand things by talking to people. In other words, just walking outside and asking people questions. I worked as a journalist briefly. I worked for 60 Minutes. I worked for ABC Investigative and CNN, but I hate that world. I didn't like it at all. And I have the distinction of being the only journalist embedded with journalists for a month in Amman, because ABC wouldn't let me sneak into Iraq to link up with SF guys. So I then thought, okay, what can I do? So I got so pissed with the whole journalism thing that I bought a red Bentley and drove around Iraq cataloging mass murder sites. And I mean, literally in the middle of the war, we're talking 2003, I'm driving a gold-trimmed Bentley Mulsanne, which only went about 100 miles because it had a fuel problem because they got looted in 97. Right? And the local farmer would come and get his cart and drag us to his house, and we would sit there. And then these people would come, and they'd been holding these secrets in for 10, 15 years, and they would tell the most horrific stories about busloads of Kurdish women being machine gunned and then bulldozed over, and soldiers, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, this is something that's not getting out. So I started to put together a ground network in Iraq first, called Iraq Slogger, which I sold as a subscription, which is kind of crass, but I made a lot of money, and it was a go-to site for a lot of analysts and government people. And then I went to Afghanistan, and I said, we met with the 4-star, and he said, can you start work today? Because we told him a bunch of stuff that he didn't know, and he wanted to know how we knew it, and he said, well, we don't work inside here. We work out there. So we then went down the most simplistic path you can imagine. And that means that if the Taliban is attacking an American installation, we get the Taliban commander, we would pay for his taxi ride, believe it or not. We'd take him up to an Italian restaurant called Rumi in Kabul, and then we'd bring a 1-star from the U.S. side, and they would sit and talk to each other. Now, the funny thing is that the general was like, what the fuck am I going to ask this guy? And I said, I don't know, ask him about his kids, ask him about the weather, just talk to the guy, ask him why he's pissed, like, why is he attacking? And he insisted that he have my SAS guy and my SF guy sit there in plain clothes with a pistol under their clothes. And I said, no, nobody's going to kill anybody. But the point was that it blew his mind because he thought, this guy's just like me. I mean, he is fighting a war because he's got wife, kids, family, and this government that we're protecting is screwing him over. So every time there would be a civcast or something, you remember the big one in Shindad or whatever?
Yeah.
We would literally be on the ground talking to the survivors, getting the names, finding out who gave them the intel. And we were watching the watchers. We were watching drone strikers saying, oh, you fucked that one up. And, we got in trouble. I ended up on the front page of the New York Times as like a ninja assassin or whatever. But the point was that we were delivering good stuff. An example would be, we met with the Taliban all the time, and I went to the 4-star and I said, what do you want to ask the leader of the little Taliban? He says, what do you mean? I said, just write it down on a piece of paper. So I would send my guy who would sit with the little Taliban guy to do this interview, and then the military would fuck with us because they'd send a spy plane over to take pictures. So in the middle of this interview, the guy goes out with a PKM and starts firing at the planes, filming the meeting. And I'm like, dude, that's cheating. You're not supposed to do this. You're supposed to play by the rules. Like you had some questions. He wants to answer them. That's how it works. So we used very old-fashioned military techniques to communicate between warring sides, which probably hasn't happened since, World War I?
World War I, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's just remarkable to me. The one interesting thing that I like to hear about, Marcus, we talk about this all the time, right? Is as you're out and you're experiencing people that are going through these massive transitions of the effects of war, you see transformation happen within them, and you see people change in front of your face. Was that something that, like, because you kind of referenced jokingly that you have this sick and twisted mind of bringing a lost boy back to Sudan to try and solve a war and all this. But does that component of it affect you to see, wow, war is really devastating and it can have long-term effects? Is that part of this quest for you to bear witness to the human condition in that depth?
No, that's horseshit. I mean, bearing witness is just what a pussy says. War...
Thanks a lot, sir.
That's a way to
appreciate that one.
War is a skill and an activity, just like fixing a car or flying a plane, that is both manageable and understandable. The fact that we don't insist that our citizens fight our wars for us has made it like some weird thing that other people do somewhere else, right?
Totally.
But there was a time that everybody was engaged in warfare to protect what they owned, right? So my personal opinion, and it doesn't make me a hawk or a dove, is that every human should experience war so that we don't have so many fucking wars.
That is absolutely brilliant. That brings me, I read an article in the Atlantic, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago, talking about this guy was advocating bringing back the draft. And I thought, well, it's stupid, so I read it. And then I understood what he was talking about. He was saying how, in comparison to take a war such as World War II, where you have a draft that compels the society to have a stake in the fight. Whereas in comparison to today, there's a very small fraction of the population that's actually has skin in the game, so to speak. So it's much easier for those people to just to be
and then you have to volunteer for it.
To whichever dictate comes down from leadership in the government as far as going to fight another conflict.
It's worse than that, because the wars we're fighting, we ask guys like you to do. We then turn you into heroes with like muscles and six-pack abs and big guns that go boom,
That
boom,
wasn't
boom.
me. That wasn't me. I never had to.
And then we have the president of the United States wondering whether he should push the button or not to launch nuclear missiles into North Korea. And we all view it as some weird like pinball game that doesn't have consequences. But these wars in Afghanistan and Syria and North Africa, these are nickel and dime countries that we're just making money off of. Real war would engulf this entire country. So whether we think we have skin in the game or not, we kind of do. It's just that we've isolated ourselves from the real repercussions of it. The people I work with are trying to start a war in Iran, and they've been trying to do it for many years, right? And what they want to do is start a proxy war in Lebanon, poke sticks at the Iranians and drop bombs here and start some kind of small war that'll be a prelude to destabilization inside Iran. And we're using Saudi to do it. We're using the Emiratis to do it. And it's a weird, dirty, filthy game because we are not brave enough to say, we are going to defend democracy and rights equally around the world. We just do these weird little, let's start a war over there, and I'm sure we'll get enough guys that want to go, train these guys up and maybe get shot at. So I don't like that kind of warfare.
Interesting. I got a question for you. You recently embedded with a SF team a few years ago. Are you hearing, and I don't want, by all means, don't, divulge anything, inside conversations you had. But I know in a lot of my friends that are still in and have been in a long time, there's, you're hearing a sense of, all right, what are we doing? What's the purpose behind that? Are you seeing that out there as well too?
Oh, now you're going to get me going. So, I'm
looking at Dave and I'm like, oh, you want to go here?
Just touch on it. It's part of this.
I've been with U.S. troops 3 times in my life, and I don't do embeds, but they require that you do embeds, right? The first one was not an embed. I was with that team they made a movie about, the guys that fought on horseback, 595, and I was with General Dostum, and I knew that he was fighting, and I wanted to get into the war, and Dostum knew of me from, I wanted to get into Afghanistan when he was fleeing, and he thought I was that crazy guy. So he invited me, and this is after they blew up Massoud, so I was the only journalist inside Afghanistan in the fighting with Special Forces and Dostum, and I saw 12 guys and a bunch of agency guys with a bunch of local guys who couldn't read or write win a war against the Taliban and actually sign a peace deal with the Taliban because they had lost, right? Mm-hmm. And then I watched State Department turn that into an entire shitfest as they said, oh no, we want this door manager, this guy from Pakistan is going to be the president, what's his name, Karzai, yeah, put him in charge, and let's get rid of all these people that have democratic and regional support. Then I went back in 2013 with the exact same ODA. And it wasn't really an embed. I filled out all the paperwork, but they told the guy there's a Game Boy in the tent, go there, and we'll be back with Robert in a week or so. And I did all kinds of cool stuff, and I really got to meet this next generation. And they were raised on stories of special forces or special operations guys being people who went out by themselves and did the right thing and came back and didn't tell anybody about it, didn't want any praise, but represented America's best interest overseas in combat, right? They're now doing PowerPoints about PowerPoints. They're drawing an org chart for me on the whiteboard that I can't even fucking understand. We can't even move unless we get all these people signed up and moved into position for medevacs and stuff like that. I say to them, well, have you met General Dostum? Because he loves you guys. And they go, no, we can't. I said, what do you mean you can't? We can't even go out of the fucking base without all these PowerPoints. And I said, okay, so we got to figure this out. So I said, okay, let's do what do they call it? Key leader engagement meeting, and then let's have one of the cars or trucks break down because they wouldn't let them stay overnight, believe it or not. They didn't let SF stay out overnight.
Oh my God.
Your 10-year-old daughter, right?
No, this is very true. This is the current state of the engagement over there in that AO.
Mm-hmm. So I set up this rather devious insurgent plan where we rolled out to do a KLE, and I don't think we even mentioned who the person was because Dostum was P&G at the time, and yet he's the kingmaker of Afghanistan. So we get to his compound, and there's a big meeting there. 300 people in a basement that you would never know, and Dostum is laying out his political plans, which were successful in putting Ghani in power, and, village by village, the old-fashioned grassroots way. And I said, okay, they're here, and Dostum had this big smile, and he dragged them all down, and he told heroic stories about each one of the Americans, right? And the guys clapped. And then we went upstairs, and there's people milling around, and I went to one of the guys, and I said, where's your next big operation? He said, I can't talk to these people. I said, trust me, just give me the fucking town. And I said to Dostum, who here is from this town? And so this guy, he's the mayor. So he walks over, and I said, these guys are going to hit your town. They're going to wipe out the Taliban. He said, good. It's about time those assholes got killed. So I said, tell him where they are. And he said, yeah, they're in this town. And when you come in, you call me, and I'll take you right to the building they're in, and you fucking kill those assholes. And then Dostum was hearing this, and he said, hey, this isn't your country, and you're our guest. Just tell me who you want, and I'll bring them to you.
Wow.
So, this SF is supposed to work.
That's how SF works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, but it does. So
design.
the sad thing is,
communication there.
I won't waste your time, but the point is a lot of guys, just like the ODA 5 was quitting on the day before 9/11, they were literally in their commander's office, who was a dick, quitting, saying, we want out of here. We're just as useless. This is all, for sure. We're not doing what we're trained to do. Now, I'm not on some soapbox because I'm not a military guy, so I'm not the guy who should be speaking, but I can tell you this, that we have made everything special in the military now, and we're solving everything with special operations, but we don't do that thing that makes them special, which is leave them alone to do their job.
Hear, hear.
Amen to that.
Water down. Everybody has to be special.
Everybody gets a beret.
Everybody
gets a beret.
All the way around.
Everybody gets a trident today. All right. Well, thank you so much, sir, for taking us down that path. Let's bring
That's
it
the biggest
back.
problem when you water it all down. You pass out the berets to everybody, and then when they have to actually go out and do the job, it's not what that beret stand in front of you. It's what it comes behind it, what it represents, man. And if you've taken that away from them, you just kind of stand there. I mean, think of the domino effect that has just by sending one of them out there that's not even prepared for what they're walking into.
Well, let me tell you, I went through Robin Sage and some of the, just for fun, I went through some of the training that SF does. And there's this really fucked up part called Robin Sage, where you take Rangers who are used to doing things a certain way, and then you launch them into these bizarre scenarios in which nothing makes sense. And they have to make a decision. They're under stress, and it's how they make that decision that says, okay, go ahead. No, sorry, you can't handle this sort of vague, bizarre world that is actually called reality, taught by your mentors, right? And I went to the instructors and I said, okay, just cut the shit. How many human beings are SF? Now, I can't speak to SEALs. I used to teach survival training to SEALs, and they'd look at me and say, sir, we're not there to get to know people. We're there to kill them. So I thought, okay, great. I'll focus on SF. But the point was that the instructors said that there's about 3 to 5% of people who qualify as SF if they meet all the physical and mental requirements, because there aren't that many people that can handle the shit that's thrown at you under that level of stress, right? And further to that, what I then realized is that these people, once they out, are not viewed as special. In other words, there's no way to integrate these folks into our culture as mentors. And this was the thing I noticed with Robin Sage. I don't know what it's like with the Navy, but the guys that have been there, done that, learned all the wisdom, made the mistakes, are not available to us as mentors, which I think is really weird.
It is bizarre, but one of the nice things that we're finding out there, and we've had a lot of amazing guys on the show, guys like Tim Kennedy, guys like Pat McNamara, guys like Dom Rosso, who we interviewed this morning, people that have a lot of breadth of experience within special operations are now recognizing that their skill sets to become mentors are viable. They're just having to do it. And obviously, you be at SHOT Show and you see them in droves out there trying to promote whatever business platform they're on. But in essence, when they have clientele or they're consulting or training at whatever level, they're acting as mentors and they're giving access, I believe, to civilians. And whether it's Marcus out there speaking or me or however it is we're doing our part to try and instill that never quit mindset.
Yeah, I mean, this
on
show is
there.
part of what
Totally.
you're talking about, an avenue of access into that, experience and
shit all over their
expertise.
veterans, man. You didn't want to tell anybody you even had the uniform on, man. And they had to whittle through all that crap that our wars kicked off. We had to go through them before you could get special and get out to even figure out what was going on. So, I mean, that time is regular, right? I mean,
I'm just saying one simple thing. I go back to Alexander, and I go back to the traditional warrior poet persona that society created to warn you against further wars. Is we don't do a good job of civilianizing warriors who can teach us. In other words, I can go in and going to some spooky company that makes sense that pops the heads off of talibs. I'm talking about kids in high school, and I do respect the fact that there's like Team Rubicon and you guys are saying, hey, I've been there, done that. Listen to me. I can help you get out of a jam or help you move forward. I'm just saying we as a society need to celebrate that soldiers are also wise people if they learn the right lessons and they're allowed to transmit it to young people.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, let's pivot back towards the listener, Robert. And obviously, you're a person that delivers stories. You share these wonderful experiences to help people gain some insight on the whole spectrum of the human condition. But in particular, I think to help people maybe look at something from a different perspective. What are some ideas or concepts that you can share from your experience that will help, launch people into their journey, that will help them feel a little bit more, confident to take those risks, to explore the world, to gain better perspective?
Well, that's a tough order, man. Okay, I'm going to give you the of life in like 30 seconds or less. Okay, the first thing is to read fucking books, okay? And that means all the free stuff that's on the internet that people don't even know is there, but you can read the classics. You can read books for thousands of years. Pick your favorite subject, pick your favorite author, but read original source books by great people. That's lesson number one.
Give us three right off the top of your head they should read right now. Three titles.
Well,
Come on, somebody just said that in their head. They're like, yeah, but like what? There's 20,000 books in the bookstore.
I would read all the works by Richard Francis Burton, who's a weird guy who kept two sets of diaries, one for all his sexual interests and the other one for culture interests.
Check.
But he went anywhere his curiosity would take him. It's a little hard to read because he uses big words and foreign words, but the point is that there is a man who didn't give a shit what people thought about him and was driven by his own personal interest.
Powerful skill.
And even when he went looking for the source, he said, "No, I'm good. You go find the source, and I'm going to hang out here and chat with the folks." Secondly, anything by a leader you admire, like, for example, Winston Churchill. He lived a very interesting life and faced a lot of adversity and was very eloquent in writing those things down. But I don't want to dictate to people of who they should read. You should read my books because my books are written from the heart. I don't have an agenda. I don't have a political party. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just saying, here's a guy that's out there. And if you read my autobiography, The Adventurist, it is a litmus test to see whether you are an adventurer or not. And it's a simple book to read. It's 300 pages, but it's well worth the read to meet a lot of interesting people. But books fire your imagination, and they're out of step with society, and that's important. Is you don't want to get into what society is thinking or doing. And I tell people right off the bat, turn off the news. Do not have a Google feed. I mean, you can go on social media to talk to your friends, but do not get swept up in what you think is important because it's what other people think is important. Okay, the second part, after you read, is to act. And this is really hard with snowflakes. And it's really hard with people because they're so fucking healthy, they're so educated, but they're in debt. I mean, they're in debt up to their eyeballs because their mama said, go to school, be a whatever, and they're $100,000 in debt, and they're terrified. They can't just go to that place they saw a picture of and hang out. I mean, when I was a kid, I decided that I would hitchhike to South America, and I had $600. I was 19. I ended up breaking people out of jail in Colombia for a living, and I had a hell of a good time. I don't know that you could tell people to do that these days. They would just look at you and say, oh, that's against the law. You can't do that. No, that's so far. And what about this? And I need that. And so you need to start with baby steps. And one of the ways to do that is go to a place you never thought you would go, whether it's the wrong side of town, just walk into the bar and start having a drink and talking to people, or do shit that's random. And you'll find that random is normal, right? It's actually quite normal to meet people you didn't meet. In other words, talk to people. Don't stare at your phone. Ask them questions like, oh, that's a nice shirt. Are you from this town or whatever? And you'll learn that people are very interesting and they're helpful and they're nice and they want to hear your side of the story. And this is how you facilitate the next move, which is to go into the most fucked up place on earth and hang out. And when I say that,
That's awesome.
Pick the place that you would never want to go and just hang out. But you got to have those skills. You got to have that book learning skill because you got to learn on your own, and you got to have people skills. And I used to sell chickens door to door when I was 10 years old, and that teaches you everything you need to know about people skills. Because
you can sell a nasty ass chicken to somebody, brother. You do got mad skills.
You got to deal with rejection. You got to deal with people saying no. It took me 3 years to meet with Ahmed Shah Massoud because I kept getting arrested and deported and kicked out, and I just kept going at it. So if you have that stick-to-itiveness and the other skills, you will have a fabulous life.
Wow. Well, I mean, sir, that's definitely some of the best advice that we've had guests give out there on, and hopefully, there are listeners right now that are going to be inspired by that. And at least the very minimum, they'll read these stories that can conjure up and ignite some grander sense of self and that exploration that does exist once you get off your ass and start visiting these places.
A deeper understanding of the world around us, and then hopefully that just contributes to making the world better in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we got for you. I mean, I would love to... I would love to keep you on for like the next 10 hours, hear about you, interview Massoud and all that. But how about maybe after your next adventure, you come back on and you share that with our listeners. What do you got working on right now, sir? And where can people go and pay attention or follow or understand what you're doing or just watch or wherever?
Okay, well, right now I'm setting up an interview with Joseph Kony. My guys are living with his bodyguards in Sudan. I'm doing a video game in which I'm in the video game, which is going to be scary and freaky. I'm writing a book about Africa. I'm writing a book about special forces. I'm writing my next autobiography, and I hang out on Facebook, but it's a private page, so unless I kill somebody, it's hard to get in there. But just Google my name, you'll see me. And I make knives. God damn it, you guys. You didn't plug my knives.
Well,
this is your opportunity.
This is your opportunity.
This is your opportunity to help yourself.
70,000 people a week.
Self-actuating. Okay, DPX Gear makes knives, special forces and special operations, because I saw the shit the government was giving them, and I said, shit, I got to make good knives the way you guys need them. And if you just Google DPX Gear, you'll see what happens when you spend some time out in the field with guys who actually use knives. So that's my plug for my company.
Have like over 20 patents or something on within DPX
24,
Gear,
and I barely have a high school degree. Yeah.
Hey, that's awesome. You're giving hope to all the knucker draggers in the world, Robert. I love it.
Oh, well, never mind. I actually have some of your knives.
The bottom line is this: people respect people in the military, but they don't realize what they've learned. And I got to tell you a quick story. I spent a lot of time man dancing in the mountains of Afghanistan, and these old mudge would come down from the hills to meet the American. And these are guys that fought in the 80s, right? And they sit there and they tell me these stories, and they're in their 60s, 50s. And they said, well, I can't read or write, but I want to tell you this story. And they tell you these mind-blowing stories. And I thought, if I could do one thing, I would bring all the SEALs, the SF guys, and I would fly them to my ranch in Afghanistan, which is just outside of Kabul, and have all the mudge sit down, and they just fucking spend the night telling stories and try to get some love between people who are used to fighting each other and realize that we all do the same thing. We fight for our family, our country, our freedom, So that's something I'd love to do one day.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you get that meeting together, I'm in, because I spent my whole career over there, and now I'm at the position where I firmly believe that conversation is the only way that nightmare is going to end. So I commend you for the thought, and hopefully you can manifest that, sir, because it really, truly is the only way to end this craziness.
Cool. I like the way you think.
Well, sir, again, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your time with us, and we look forward to the future when we can get you back on here.
Well, it's actually been a pleasure, because I don't usually talk about military things because I'm not a military guy, but I enjoy this topic very much. So anytime I'm
Yeah, that was great. I got the knives up there.
Marcus is already looking at your knives on the website.
that chop first, that half 12 chop first run. I'm gonna have to get that in there.
Well, have a great time at SHOT Show, sir. God bless you.
I'll talk to you. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Talk to you again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Holy shit, Marcus. That dude's awesome. I'm serious.
Is it Sir Robert Young?
I wanted to say that every time.
Is it?
Like he'd been knighted, like he's some
Is
Indiana
it not
Jones.
It's not that way, though?
You either have to be a knight or a very famous assassin
and I'm
to.
usually the only ones that... Go ahead.
What is that, a full name basis?
Yeah.
Right?
You're using your middle name as part of your surname, right?
He definitely lay out the what I kept thinking about. You tell him he's broke, came from nothing, he's poor, and finished. And it's kind of a line-by-line, basic, bare bones... Hey man, you want to have a great life, kind of, because the meaning of life is that it has meaning, right? You can't. And what he was talking about with all that money and everything, how do you say it? I can't remember. But ultimately, what it boils down to is the value you have better be inside of you, not what you can put on, because that can be stripped away from you in a heartbeat. And when if you come from nothing, man, and no money, no last name, that's a beautiful part about, I guess, being around in this country and this time, man. Is you just go out and create one. Because most everybody's gonna, I'll say not everybody, but most people want to assimilate. They know there's a path, the education. I get this on my wall, in my car, in the garage, in the house, the wife, and the kids. And that doesn't resonate with some people. It just doesn't even make sense. It doesn't feel right when you're doing that. And those people who realize that that's not their calling, man, they're
driven into that misery.
Right, and there's absolutely, an infinite amount of ways to make a living and make a life, right? There is. He goes
he's
out
proof.
And chases the adventures and writes about it. That's a thing.
It's a big thing, apparently.
Big thing. Exactly. You know what I mean?
It's a thing.
When you're sitting there and I was thinking about this too, man, when we're all around and huddled around each other, and even when you got people with a lot of money or fancy cars, cars outside, your money's in the bank. When we're all sitting in this room, man, you better have something more than that to tell me. Tell me a story.
The real value.
Yeah, tell me something.
Right.
I'd like to hear how you made your money, and you typed on the computer, and I programmed this in, and then all of a sudden this money went to my account. Or you go out like, man, 2005, I was out in the middle of Afghanistan, in the middle of nowhere, when the helicopter went and got down. All of a sudden a donkey came over the hill. 2 dudes threw me on the back of it, took me to a tent, and for a month I was laying in there with the head of some dude that just took over a country because a couple of dudes dressed up in green camouflage came in and told me it was going to be all right. You just sit there and go all day with that story. Are you gonna? That's the great part about it, man. Is how you live your life and how you.
And it doesn't even have to be adventure in a war. Does it either, Wizard? You can go have it
billions of dollars off of talking about anything.
Go follow the most bizarre sporting events in the world. Go follow the most. Go visit the most ancient ruins in the world. Climb the 7 highest peaks. Whatever it is that gets you out in this massive world we live in. And what I heard, and this is just me, and this is part of my whole thing, is there are so many people that have so many things to contribute, right? 8 billion people. That's a lot of stories. That's a lot of potential relationships at whatever level you constitute a relationship that can affect you and affect your frame of reference of what this whole human condition is about. He's not just doing it in his own town, in his own region, his own state, his own job. Man, this guy's doing it worldwide.
That whole read the book concept, man, that's where the stories are hidden. You go back a long way. Books have been around for a while.
The Iliad?
Yeah, you want to open up an adventure and see what's capable or what's not possible. That's the best part about it. You read something and you're going through the numbers and it hadn't been solved or hadn't been figured out or somebody hadn't. Everyone thinks the adventures are gone. They're just getting started. There's a new one every single day, man, because the old adventures go away and die and the new ones are coming up and go in. You hear it all the time. Remember we were talking about the Antikythera?
Yeah.
Was it Jacques Cousteau went in on, or vice versa? Somebody went in diving on that wreck the first time, and then 100 years later or something like that, it's like, wait a minute, I'm a little bit better diver than that dude, I think. Let's go check that out again.
Yep.
Went back down in, and boom.
Huge. Huge.
I
like your point about that. is that we evolve, right? History evolves, humanity evolves, and just because you're not hacking through the Nile River jungle and going
The Heart of Darkness. Dr. Livingston.
even if it's you want to go on a surf adventure, you love surfing, right? Or you love kayaking, or if you love mountain climbing, just go out. You love riding motorcycles, go ride.
Is it worth? I guess it's worth saying this to the younger generation. If there's something that you see online or on a movie or on TV that sparks your interest,
Go do it.
Go do it. For real.
Go do it.
Yeah, for real.
Well, you know what? Really, one of the big points that he came up with, and it was the second item in his advice, the part about acting, and it was rolled into it about basically becoming too encumbered by the restrictions they have, whether it's social or financial, and they become so concerned about maintaining this comfortable life that has been this prescribed life that they've been thinking is what they have to attain, and they have so much responsibility to just maintain that life and what's in it that it takes so much of their time that they are unable to truly go out and pursue
Freedom.
what they want. And we're not talking just, I mean, it's easiest, perhaps most simple to understand it in from the perspective of material possessions. You know, you got to pay for this house and you have a mortgage and all this. Well, I think he was advocating that encumber yourself in life with the things that supports your pursuit of what you want out of life, and don't take on all this extra baggage because it just weighs you down.
Perfect example what he said. Hey, man, you don't need to go to Zimbabwe or anything like that. Just go to the other side of the tracks, climb in some dive bar there, and start talking to people. That's the adventure. That's the different perception. And that, in and of itself, will spark that domino thing that you talked about, Marcus, and lead into another adventure and another adventure.
People can talk smack all day on, when you get on social media, like, I'm going to see how go in over there and say that to them.
Right? Right? Yeah, I mean, the haters are the haters, right?
The more social we become, the less social we are. We talk about this. You can't stand in front of somebody and say LOL. I mean, you got to laugh at their joke. Right? I mean, you got to.
It seems so simple, but yet.
Yeah, it's cultivating our instinct, right? The more people we're around.
I like that.
And the more different personalities we deal with, the better we become. I mean, it teaches us something about ourselves that we didn't know. That's why when I had kids and start taking them to school, a lot of people will complain about the teachers being mean and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, man, my kids spend more time with those teachers now than they do me. And ultimately, what's happening is they're learning how to deal with that type of person because they're going to run into them again. If I come in and start bailing, it's the teacher, for God's sake. It's safe. They're just mean or whatever it is, right? There's no imminent danger. So let them deal with that. I mean, that's part of growing up. It's supposed to be part of school. And I think a lot of times, I guess you can overshadow the young. It's a protection thing. When we were in that spot, we're like, hey, man, I got this. Let me try and figure this out. Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit and help our listeners understand, Marcus, how developing instinct becomes critical for developing the never quit mindset?
Ultimately, if you boil it down to everything that was important to you, it would be for survival, right? What it takes, the instincts you need that you're born with when you're a baby, when you come out, and when you can't speak yet, so you cry. That's when you're hungry, but a lot of times those preconceived notions of fear are implemented in us from our parents because it's what they're afraid of, not us, and
it deadens those instincts,
right? And the more you tack onto that, it's kind of counterproductive.
Counterintuitive, too.
Right. Everyone knows, man, that as you go through life, it's the pressure that makes you better. Everything on this planet and everything in this universe is derived off of pressure, either good and bad or light and dark, whatever it is. Go down this rabbit's hole.
I think it's critical that the listeners understand what we're trying to say is that, and also I think what Robert was trying to say is in our society now, there's a certain familiarity that is deadening the instinct to take risk. To be risk averse.
How about this one? You take on responsibilities that really aren't your own and worries that really aren't your own just by looking through that computer, and it's because it's affecting somebody on the other side, right? And that's kind of a human condition too, because we worry about each other, pack animals, if you will. But Make sure that the dignity that you carry is also your own and doesn't reside in somebody else's life. Because I mean, if their dignity is stripped away, so is yours. And if you can be taken apart because somebody else can, then you never really lived your own life. You're living somebody else's. I mean, if you think something's, we talked about this earlier. I mean, pain is a matter of perception of the beholder and the situation that you're in. We've trained ourselves in so many situations that it's not stressful to us. I'm not stressed out at all. But you'll see people in situations losing their minds. The human body and what we are is such an amazing invention, right? It's always evolving, man. And those instincts that we hone in over time, we pass those down. It makes them better. But no matter what, you will always see, man, when it gets hard or when things get bad, you get hit, you will go down to, we call it animal instinct because animals do the same things we do. If your hands are tired, you try and chew out of it, and all the way up to the way we communicate. If we're in pain, we yell out loud. It's the same thing. But our ability to interact with each other and in certain situations is what has made us unique. And if you start taking that away, you're going to take away what's unique about us. And you go back to just like a general collective of a mass that can't really do anything without somebody telling them, you know?
I love it. So, that's a lot to digest. This interview, I know the Wizard and I and Marcus were listening to this guy just in complete and utter amazement at his life experience, the spectrum of his perspective, and I think just his overall never quit attitude to go out and get in the shit, dude. I mean,
I love his curiosity.
Right, yeah.
That's the fuel.
He never quits
the fuel
there.
that takes him out there, his curiosity for life.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Listen, if you tuned in and this is your first show with us at TNQ Podcast, man.
Take some aspirin.
Oh, yeah, literally. No, go sit back. Go
put the bottle down.
Put the bottle down and go sit down and ponder what you just heard. If you're a repeat offender and you're back for more, you are a glutton for punishment, and we love your ass. So thank you. And
or you're on the payroll.
Are you on a payroll? We love you too, though. And without you, this show wouldn't be what it is. So, and here's the deal. If you know somebody out there that's struggling, if you know somebody out there that is floundering, that is trapped inside that prison of comfort that Robert was discussing, man, then push this show to them. Go to their phone, pull up the iTunes podcasting app, subscribe to our show, download this show, and press play and make them listen to this. Because hopefully, hearing us talk about it, hearing him talking about it, will spark something in them to want to get out there and experience life that can change their perspective, man. Because that's the essential component. From that life experience, you will begin to develop the never quit mindset. It's just that simple. All right. And if you also have a killer never quit story, write in. Go to the website at TNQ Podcast, to the place where it says share your story, upload that story. We'll go through it. We'll post it on with our community, with the rest of our teammates who've written in. If it's really amazing, we'll read it on the air. We got one here for you right now. And if it's phenomenal, Marcus,
coming on.
You're going to come on with us, and you're going to be a listener guest on the show. All right. Before we wrap it up, the Wizard gave me this story. And this is from Mike. It says, my never quit moment. Now, I've been going back and forth with this. I'm not what you'd call a bashful person, but it makes me wonder if you guys would even see this. I've been a listener for about 2 weeks. Once I found your podcast, I've been obsessed. I listen to this anytime I'm commuting to and from work and to the gym and wherever else I'm going. My never quit moment isn't exactly straightforward as some of the stories you've read in the past. So here it goes. When I was 16, I left home because of an abusive father and a heroin-addicted mother. Now, don't get me wrong, my parents are good people, but I couldn't stay anymore. I stayed with friends and stayed at a firehouse I volunteered at time to time. I worked at a grocery store, stocking shelves to make enough money to get to school, buy my first car, a 1990 S10 for $400. Well done, by the way. And enough to buy a loaf of bread and meat ends from the grocery store I worked at. I went from place to place over the next few years, and one bad relationship after the next. I got to the point where I thought that there was no one out there who would understand my past, the abuse, or the exposure to the drugs. So after a few years of this cycle, I became homeless, living out of my car. One of the hardest things to do was to find a place to park so I could sleep and no one would find me. I went through this for almost 9 months. I was tired of this lifestyle and turned to alcohol. Somehow, I managed to get hired as a firefighter in the DC metro area. I struggled with alcoholism, depression, and was almost fired. All of this was from when I was 16 to 21. Fast forward to present time. I was promoted to lieutenant with my department, married the woman of my dreams, and we have our own home. My never quit moment came February 2nd, 2017 at 10:23 a.m. when I became a father. The world stood still in that moment as my wife held our son. I knew in that moment failure would never be an option for me. Everything that I thought bothered me was gone in an instant. My new focus is to be the backbone of my family, to raise my son with respect, honor, and dignity. I want him to be a better man than I ever could be. Marcus, Wizard, Rut, you men inspire me daily in both my professional life as a leader, company officer, as a man, and a father. Now, listening to other listener submissions, I know my life could be so much worse. Just know you all give me something to look forward to daily. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for all that you gentlemen have done for our great country. Mike, you're a hard homeboy. I mean, brother, to come out of that environment, to go to homeless, to find your passion, to get hired, to have them take a risk, to find the woman and to become a father, brother, man, bravo Zulu on you. You represent what we believe is the greatest of the never quit mindset. Thank you so much for having the courage to write your story in and to share it with the tens of thousands of people that are paying attention in our team. We just couldn't thank you enough for doing that, brother. I want to thank God. I want to thank Christ. I want to thank my girls, my family, my mom and dad. I want to thank, all my dad in particular for inspiring me to get out there and experience the world there is out there, to be a Renaissance man. Because without that influence, man, I don't know if I would have ever done half the things I'd ever done in my life. I want to thank Robert Young Pelton. Man, God bless you, sir. You are you're an amazing human being. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your amazing insights into this world. To all our listeners, God bless you guys. Get out there. Go do it. Go see it. Go experience. Become the adventurer you've always dreamed of. And to you two cats, man, thanks, you guys. I really appreciate doing this show with you, being able to do what we're doing and to serve this great country one more time.
Absolutely.
That was a good one. So, Robert, thank you.
I swear to God, he's a knight.
That was a good one. But yes, sir. Thank you for coming on. To everybody who keeps bringing us back, man, we can't thank you enough. It's an unbelievable privilege to have this and be able to get out here and just to share these stories with these amazing people and share them with you guys. So thank you all so much for that. God bless. I'm out.
Out.
Team aim never quit. Team aim never quit. Team never quit.